Now, the presidential candidates in the United States of America are resorting to rhetoric and counter-rhetoric. The two leaders are trying to seal the deal by asserting stronghold. We are just 3 days from the big day in the United States of America, and it's all about the pulse on the ground right now. So joining me on the telecast is our correspondent, Heeral Sachde. She's in New York right now. Thank you, Heeral, for joining me on the telecast. And first up, what's the mood on the ground? What's the latest? Biden's garbage remark has spiraled. Donald Trump is taking full mileage, driving a garbage truck. That happened yesterday. Now, he was playing to the galleries. Do you think the Americans are reacting to these histrionics, these theatrics? Are they buying into it?
Biden's comment has been dominating the news cycles. Clearly, Kamala Harris's campaign has tried to distance themselves from it, and they have White House as well as Kamala Harris's campaign have clearly sent out comments, and they've sent out statements saying that clarifying the president's remark and also Kamala Harris's stance on this. In fact, responding to a media interview, Kamala Harris said, and I quote, "I strongly disagree with any criticism of the people based on who they vote for, and I have made that clear throughout my career, including my speech at last night before I think this all happened, which is I intend to be a president for all Americans, including those who may not vote for me in this election," end quote. So Americans are clearly watching this, and even as some of them have already voted, some are doing so as we speak, and some are going to do that on the 5th of November. So we only know after 5th of November how much of an impact these comments from the Donald Trump supporters and from Joe Biden has had an impact on the elections.
Right. Now let's take a look at the numbers. Now, what are the poll projections been like for Donald Trump and for Kamala Harris? Because whether we talk about the Wall Street Journal or the CBS poll, there is obviously the very popular, much watched poll of FiveThirtyEight ABC. There's Ipsos. What are the poll projections today?
ABC Ipsos poll suggests voters trust Trump more with certain issues like economy, inflation, immigration. Voters believe more in Harris on issues like abortion, healthcare, democracy, and looking out for the middle class. So there's a speech at Madison Square Garden, Kamala Harris's closing argument, and Biden's comments that have come in following that closing argument. All that is not yet reflecting on the polls. But as we go ahead, and in the next few days, if there is another poll that comes out right before the day of the final voting, if those numbers can reflect, we would definitely keep an eye out on that. Polling is already underway, and the last lap we are ensuring that all votes are in. So both parties are concentrated on finishing their last lap of campaigning in key states, and that is where the focus right now is. It is hard to tell what the voters are thinking and where they are leaning in the light of all the political theatrics that is happening at the moment.
Right, absolutely. Now, Kamala Harris is once again back to the swing states. She actually visited 3 of these battleground states. This is Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and North Carolina. What kind of support is she getting from the voters down there?
According to Newsweek article, and this is taking an average of all the polls that have been happening. This particular article has gone ahead and quoted a lot of polls in its report. So according to that, Donald Trump has a slight edge. Kamala Harris is trailing in some of these states. Most polls show a 1 to 2% higher margin for Donald Trump. So Kamala Harris clearly has some catching up to do. Well, it is quite minor at this stage, as you can say. However, a CNN poll says that Harris has a narrow edge in Michigan and Wisconsin. In fact, some polls in Wisconsin show Harris has a 6% lead. This is the CNN SSRS poll. Most polls in Wisconsin also show that she leads 1 to 6 points ahead of Trump. So if you really look at it, it's just going all over the place. In North Carolina, Trump and Harris have barely a 1% margin. So as far as these 3 particular states go, this is what the numbers look like as we speak. and the polls are really not able to reflect a clear direction where the voters are going to go in this election.
Okay, all right. Talking about the number of voters that have cast their ballot already, there are about 65 million of them who have already voted by post or because of early voting. Now, there are more and more Americans who prefer to cast vote early. We saw that in 2020 elections as well. It's clearly that, you know, the early voting numbers have surpassed the previous 2020 election numbers.
Trump is critical of early voting, and that's the stance that Republicans have held since his last run in the White House and in the 2020 election as well, and even in 2016. But this time around, some of the Republicans are encouraging an early vote. Democrats, on the other hand, are pushing voters to go out, vote early, pick up an early ballot, send in their votes by mail. So that's the foundational difference between the two parties. And the point to be noted is early voting does not just include going at a poll station, but also casting your vote by mail and posting it through the postal service. So that's a very peculiar feature that is still being used in America. So on that front, yes, the number that we have currently looks really huge. Like, a lot of people have already cast their votes. In fact, one of the CNN reports says that 35% of Republicans are early voters, up from 29% in 2020. And as far as the Democrats go, they make up for 45% of early vote. That is what it was in 2020. That number has actually gone down. So people voting Democratic, early voters who are voting Democratic have gone down to 39% at this moment.
Okay, all right. Talking about Trump's foreign policy, because once again he's come on to the public platform. He's sent out a message to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he said that he wants the Gaza war to be over by the time he enters office. Now, Trump's foreign policy, is it resonating with the American?
Well, Trump has claimed that as soon as he comes into office, he's going to end the chaos in Middle East. But both Trump and Harris have given unwavering support to Israel, not just now, for always. In fact, the stance that America has is that Israel is a very, very strong ally, and it's not Netanyahu per se, it's Israel. So it's hard to say if the administration or the government, whichever it is, the Republicans or the Democrats, see that as two separate people. So the issue might be contentious in states where there are a large number of Muslim voters, like Michigan. But some reports surprisingly suggest that Donald Trump is leading amongst Arab American voters, and this is irrespective of the situation in Middle East. So we really don't know how the conflict is going to impact the actual voters here. Of course, if you look at the popular vote or popular opinion, of course nobody wants a war, nobody wants to see that kind of a war. But I really don't know if the people understand the complexity and people understand why this war is happening, or whether which side is right or wrong here. So that kind of reportage really varies from media to media, and the narrative is very expansive over here. So there is no clear preference that the war should end or should not end. So it really needs to be seen whether Donald Trump can actually keep up his promise if he comes to power.
Right, absolutely. And you know, it will last 4 days to go, in fact, and where all are Harris and Trump heading for their next set of rallies and public addresses?
Both the presidential candidates are hitting the road in the last lap of elections. And what we do know from reports is that Kamala Harris is going to be in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. Thursday, she will be in Arizona and Nevada. In fact, she will be joining Jennifer Lopez in Las Vegas as a part of her presidential campaign. And this is, of course, coming from Rolling Stone. So we've seen a few celebrity endorsements for Kamala Harris and also in Trump's rally as well. Trump, on the other hand, is going to be in Wisconsin and North Carolina, and then he's going to be back in Wisconsin on Friday. So we also know that Tim Walz has been doing the rounds a lot of these swing states, and he's also doing a lot of media coverage, trying to be on prominent shows, morning shows on popular networks. So that is how the last lap of election campaigning is going on here.
Right, absolutely. Now, thanks, Cedric, for giving us all those updates. I'll keep coming back to you as New York decides to vote. Of course, it's 4 days to go. So all the developments, the latest instructions are going to be provided to us by Huril. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the latest developments that have happened in United States of America in terms of the electoral politics, the campaigning that is going on in full stead by the Republicans and by the Democrats. The countdown for the historic 2024 United States elections. There are 3 days to go. Both the presidential candidates face a crucial moment to amplify their messages. And in this final stretch, Republican candidate Donald Trump and the Democratic candidate Kamala Harris are honing in on the pivotal swing states to cement their paths to the White House, all while engaging in pointed exchanges that highlight the intensity of their rivalry. Let's take a look at this report.
With only 3 days remaining before the election, Democratic candidate Kamala Harris and Republican candidate Donald Trump are actively campaigning in the crucial swing states of Nevada and Arizona. Kamala Harris recently took a dig at Donald Trump. She criticized Donald Trump's claim of protecting women whether they like it or not, saying it shows his misunderstanding of women's autonomy.
It actually is, I think, very offensive to women in terms of not understanding their agency, their authority, their right and their ability to make decisions about their own lives, including their own bodies.
Trump had made this remark at a rally in Wisconsin, despite his aides advising him against using that phrase.
I'm president. I want to protect the women of our country, they said. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to protect them from migrants coming in.
The Republican Party, including Trump, has struggled with messaging on abortion rights amid increasing restrictions affecting women's access to terminate unwanted pregnancies. On the other hand, singer and actress of Puerto Rican descent Jennifer Lopez joined Harris on stage at a rally in Las Vegas, where she condemned Trump after one of his supporters referred to Puerto Rico as a floating island garbage.
It wasn't just Puerto Ricans that were offended that day, okay? It was every Latino in this country. It was humanity and anyone of decent character.
There, Harris addressed supporters, emphasizing the fatigue many Americans feel from the divisions fostered by Trump. She pledged to implement a tax cut for the middle class, prioritizing the need to lower the cost of living. In recent days, Harris has received support from several prominent Latino figures, although some polls indicate that Trump may have made gains among Latino voters. Furthermore, Donald Trump, on Tuesday, claimed that if God were the one counting the votes, he would emerge victorious in a landslide, even in traditionally Democratic strongholds like California. Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump 49% to 48% in the Harris x Forbes poll, while Trump is ahead by 48% to 46% and sent in CNBC, indicating a shift toward Trump since August. Trump is scheduled to speak later today in Michigan and Wisconsin, while Harris will hold a rally in Wisconsin. The country goes to poll on 5th November. Bureau Report, NewsX.
All right, let's dive deep into it. Joining me on the telecast is Peter Watson. He's the former president, CEO of OPIC. He has joined Sawakawa Peace Foundation USA as Distinguished Senior Fellow, non-resident. Thank you very much, Peter Watson, for joining me on the telecast. And first things first, what do you make of the latest set of attacks and counterattacks coming in from Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and of course Joe Biden, again putting foot in his mouth, talking about that garbage guff? Has that backfired for the Democrats?
Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity of visiting with you. In just a moment, I thought Edith did a very good job of review of where we are today. Listen, I think we've seen too much of this rather silly statements from both sides. I think it's actually not helpful to either side, frankly. But honestly, I think we're focusing now on more of the fundamental differences between these two candidates. And of course, as Edith pointed out, there's been a substantial amount of voting anyway. But I think right now, as people come to vote in these last few days, they're actually not thinking about unfortunate statements from both sides. They're really focused on what their core personal and family interests are.
And what are these core family interests, personal interests for an average American on the basis of which they go and cast their vote? In fact, a large percentage of them, I think 65 million of them have already cast their vote.
Indeed. And I think we can safely say, and we've seen this in any number of polls, unsurprisingly, most heads of households are thinking first and foremostly about the security of their families, economic security, personal security as it pertains to crime, an increasing amount. This is where Trump's doing quite well. A huge number of crimes against families and communities by illegal immigrants, rapes of young women, killings. So personal security, economic security, and community and concerns about community. These are the paramount issues that confront American voters.
Right, absolutely. Talking about, a number of Republicans who have shown this aggressive attitude when it comes to the elections. There has been Donald Trump, who has also once again raised the issue, says he is not trustful of the election process. He's made a comment that, if God were to actually count the votes, he would win hands down. Now, does this bring memories of the 2020 elections, where he had again, accused the election commission, the voting process, the election process, that it was allegedly rigged?
Now, I think people have got some level of concern for that, but my judgment will be that at the actual vote will discern and determine whether or not we have reason to be concerned about the past experience. I think law enforcement, voters, we're all going to be, I think, more driven on what the results are coming out of the days of the election, coming days after that, rather than what has happened in the past.
Right, absolutely. And the very recent comment that has been made by Donald Trump, this is with regards to the Bangladeshi Hindus. Now that has touched a chord. Do you think this is resonating with Indian Americans and Hindu Americans particularly, and do you think this statement is particularly targeted in a bid to influence the Indian American voters, and do you think Indian American voters are a substantial chunk that could sway in favor of the Democrats or the Republicans, and then be crucial in deciding who the president becomes?
Demographics are fascinating. And one of the challenges, to your point, actually, that the Kamala Harris has, is that traditional significant bulk of blocks of the Democratic Party have consistently started to move more conservative. And that's why you've actually seen increasing polls of Latinos, Black Americans, certainly males, Asian Americans, tend to be increasingly conservative. And we're seeing that reflected in important ways in these critical battleground states. It's noting, parenthetically, that if you look at Kamala Harris's rankings in the battleground states relative to where Biden was at the same time in 2020 and Mrs. Clinton was at the same time, she is underwater in almost all of the battleground states, with the exception of Wisconsin.
Okay, which is where she's also going to be campaigning later today. Both of them, in fact, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, going to be over there. But let's shift our focus to, from domestic politics to obviously the foreign policy that each of the candidates have envisaged and highlighted as how they're going to be handling the Ukraine war and what is going to be their their entire policy with regards to the Middle Eastern crisis, or for that matter, how to tackle China. Now China particularly, Donald Trump has said this categorically, that he is going to be putting huge tariffs, increase the tariffs on imports that are coming in to the country, including the ones from China. So does this really become a key issue, the way a voter is voting in America? Do you think foreign policy is going to work in one candidate's favor over the other?
Well, actually, interesting that you make 2 points on China. One is the economic issues around tariffs. And frankly, that really hasn't been a significant issue in this campaign cycle. But China is more, I think more fundamentally, is a critical issue in this campaign, insofar as it's not been a major issue as either candidates have put it. But to your point, Republicans and certainly Trump supporters have not been at all comfortable about the war in Ukraine, whereby the view from these people is the United States is, under the last administrations, has created an enemy of Russia at a time previously we've had relatively decent relations with Russia, and the existential threat to the West is China. Profoundly China. And the United States has taken their eye off the ball. They really need to be thinking about what does the alliance structure look like in terms of managing the China threat. And so that's why you see a lot of Trump folks who have been concerned by essentially making Russia an enemy at the cost of not including them in a lot to deal with China.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And let's talk about economy, and I think that's on which the entire election revolves. Maybe those 3 points: economy, immigration, and abortion rights. That has been, Kamala Harris has been campaigning the pro-abortion rights, and there are a number of women who are likely to vote for her, more than those who are going to vote for Trump. But do you think economy is Trump's strong point, and Kamala Harris, never having been the president, has not had the opportunity to display her skills and economic policies that could work in favor of the country or not?
Your point about Kamala Harris not having the opportunity to demonstrate her role here, and I feel sort of sorry for her to a certain extent. She was brought in to essentially assume the responsibility of the crashed Biden campaign, and so she was unprepared and certainly didn't have a clear set of messages earlier on, certainly. But, I think it's not so much the campaign messaging either for Harris or Trump. What Kamala's had to deal with is a deep concern by middle America, working families, about increasing cost of groceries, of rent, mortgages, petrol, fuel. This is where there's a significant advantage that Trump's been able to take advantage of deep concern about and this comes back to my earlier point, of household concern, personal economic security, jobs. And this is where the immigration point obviously crosses into the economic line. May I just make a point on the abortion issue?
Yes. Talking about the abortion issue, and do you think, it is more of a likelihood that the women are going to vote for Harris then they're going to obviously prefer Harris to Trump, but there's certain poll agencies who have once again reflected that Trump has been trying to reach out to women. In fact, his latest statement, it is his duty to protect the women of the country, whether they like it or not, which was again twisted by the Harris campaign, talking about how this is actually undermining the rights of the women in the country.
I've seen some very interesting nuanced statistics. Women are not single issue voters. They do have very real concern about reproductive rights. They do take those into consideration, but it doesn't automatically have them voting for Kamala Harris. They also are very, and remember, this is demographics. You've got Gen Z, you've got Gen X, you've got the baby boomers, all who've got different reproductive cycles, you know?
Yeah.
And so you can't say that all women are against Trump or all women are pro Kamala Harris. You've got a number of women who are concerned about their personal economic security, family security, crime, and all of these issues, and the general trend to a more conservative perspective demographically in key places in the United States. This is where we're going to see, I think, the major driver in this in this election.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.